Yes.
And she had it in the
America's
minutes.
best.
Saugatuck
So you go.
Township.
It's so weird that they would make it specific to where they go.
It's the only.
All right. Yes, I'm calling the meeting of the Saugatuck Parks and Public Works Committee meeting. Yeah. I'm adjourning. Good, thank you. What? Okay. Got it. Okay. All right. Jamie, can you please call the roll?
Tarek,
Here.
Hoffman, Kimball,
Yes.
Roach,
Here.
Stanton,
Here.
Teal.
Here.
Okay,
And you will say you have a quorum.
I have a quorum. We have a
We have
quorum.
a quorum.
Thank you. Give me all the tips I need, Jamie. Okay, now, we need to do the approval of the agenda. Are there any, changes to the agenda that anyone would like to offer?
No.
Okay, so then can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
And I will second it.
Okay, all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Okay,
And please say motion carries.
motion carried unanimously. Okay, approval of the minutes from our last meeting, and it says on the agenda here that it was a special meeting that was actually not a special meeting, it was our regular meeting.
Yeah.
I did notice one thing in the minutes, which was that we talked about right towards the end about possibly communicating with some of our neighboring communities, parks committees and that kind of thing. And so what the minutes say is that Saugatuck Township had no parks committee or commission, but that's actually not correct. They have a parks commission.
What page-
Douglas, what
page
page
of
of,
the minutes?
I don't have them in front of me. It was towards the end. And I think it was my comments. Under, like,
Under council comments?
under council comments.
Council
Go, I think it's all the way.
Under
to
clothing
Yeah,
comments.
go under Kimball.
There it is.
There, and so it said that specifically mentioned we should engage with our counterparts and basically,
Yeah.
and it says Saugatuck Township does not have an active parks group, but they do, it's Douglas that does not. Any other comments on the minutes?
What was the other comment about it being a special meeting? Where was that?
I don't know if that says it in the minutes. Go up to the top. No, it's actually, that is on the agenda. And it's also, Jamie, on when you send out, when the email gets sent out about the PPW meeting,
But it's not in the minutes, correct?
it's not
Okay,
in the
that's all my
minutes.
concern. Thank you.
Okay, that's my only comment on the minutes.
Okay, so just one change to the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, do we need to vote on that?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so all in favor of approving the minutes with that one edit? Oh, Keith, do you have?
No, I'm saying aye.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, who's making the motion?
Okay, I can make the motion. Motion to approve the minutes, the regular meeting minutes from March 25th, 2025 with the suggested correction.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor, say yes.
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 Okay, opposed, none, motion carried. Okay, all right, now we're on to public comments, and these will be on agenda topics only. Is there anyone in the room who would like to make a comment? And you probably know the rules, but it's a 3-minute limit.
Quick. My name's Bill Wint. I'm at 120 D Elizabeth Street up on the hill. 2 comments. One was I sent a note to the city manager a couple of years ago about the courts, the village courts, down at tennis courts. And my only point was they need, if they're repave them to the fence, the backstop. Because if you're a tennis player and you're chasing a ball and hit the grass, it's kind of dangerous and keeps good players away from using that. And I think I saw the harbor area mentioned somewhere in correspondence. My only comment on that was that I'm a walker, a runner, I'm in a walking group. We have a wonderful pier where you can fish and walk and enjoy the views. There's about 10 to 20 yards to get there, though, you have to navigate 10 to 20 yards of broken cement slabs means jumping from one to the other and so forth. And I think a walkway that was maybe temporary, you could pull out in the winter or something, would be helpful for us old people.
I'm-
Because it is kind of dangerous, really, if you've been down there. So-
Okay, I'm trying to. Does
Where
anybody-
is
this?
Exactly where?
Exactly.
This is where the pier is at. If you walk down Oval Beach to the pier, if you want to walk on the pier, which is in great shape, you have to navigate these broken slabs of
The
cement and
breakwater.
so forth to get to the pier. We used to live in St. Joe and people used the pier for walking and fishing. They still do that, but it's a younger group that can get out there. So on a to-do list sometime.
Scott, you know.
I think that would be nice.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay,
Thank
all
you
right.
so
Thank you for that
much.
comment. Okay, is there anyone on Zoom?
Thank you.
Nobody is on Zoom. Okay, so that will conclude our public comments. So we are ready to move on to our review and discussion, item number 6, starting with potential projects. And the first category there is council priorities. I just want to start off by saying I'm delighted that we're finally having this conversation. So let's make it obviously interactive. There's nothing to vote on here at this point. I think it'll just be discussion and really finding out where everyone's interests are and the pros and cons of the various projects. And I thought too, it would be good as we talk through these to think about what kind of resources it would take to attack these projects. So I'm viewing this as, here are a lot of things that this group could focus on. There are some that we will need to do, but there are others that are optional, and I don't think we can do them all. So let's try to figure out what makes sense, who's most interested in what. So with that, the first item is Mount Baldhead vegetation restoration. And Scott, do you want to just give the background that you gave to me about why we need this?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you. Forget, I don't know what year it was, but probably around a decade ago or so, Michigan State University had came out to Mount Baldhead with the intent of eradicating Asian bittersweet. The dune was kind of overran by it. It's a vine. It grows up trees. It chokes the native vegetation out, and so there was an attempt to eradicate it. I'm not sure if it was known that it was a non-selective herbicide or if it was stated at the time or maybe believed at the time that it was a selective herbicide, but that's just a minor detail because it killed the vegetation. And so since that time, there's been a few, there was a study done. I have yet to find it again, but I think it got lost in files. But there was a study conducted, just taking somewhat of an inventory of the vegetation, especially the trees that were lost. I have a list of the tree varieties that were killed, but I don't have the quantities that the report had said. So there's been a few different attempts, successfully too. Some people view them as not successful attempts because there were tree planting that took place, but the logistics of that site really warranted the planting of bare root trees. And with bare root trees, you expect some, especially in sandy soil like that, you could expect some rate of failure. So many of the trees that were planted have died, but a lot of them are still doing well. And so in my mind, that was exactly what the intent was behind the plantings. And so it's still looking pretty bare. Over the years, there's been more concern about some of the erosion taking place just with the vegetation loss. And so one of the council priorities for this year was to at least get some momentum going on some vegetation restoration. That may be in the form of ground cover, which is probably our best bet. I think engineering and public works, we explored the idea of mechanical erosion mitigation, like seawalls, that sort of thing, retaining walls. That's probably not feasible given the geography of it. But with any erosion, vegetation root structures are probably the best bet, and slowing it down or stopping it altogether. So part of the restoration attempts were that the trees that were killed from the herbicide, they were cut down and the logs were to remain on the dune. That also helps with erosion. But there's still just some damage that's been done, unfortunately. So, you know, council wanted to revisit that, especially from like Lucy Street, you know, in the wintertime, if you look up at that dune, it's very obvious. As that erosion kind of creeps up towards Radar Dome and whatnot, it has potential to be a pretty serious issue. So,
Scott, do you know how big of an area that is? Just
no,
guess.
no,
I mean, like
yeah,
a couple of acres?
yeah, probably fair to say a couple of acres, definitely. But it's also one of those things too, where, you know, if we go up and if we send, you know, large groups up this dune, all those footprints are also creating more erosion. And so it's kind of a tricky spot of what's the right thing to do and how much to mitigate. I think what we've done so far is successful, but I think that we can still do a little bit more in terms of, you know, some ground cover or smaller tree plantings. But, and I don't, you know, for me, I'd love to see, you know, us consult professional services on this, you know, like the Allegan County Conservation District, who I called, waiting to hear back from them to see if they can help us out with at least some sort of a recommendation of, if we are going to go with the route of like ground cover, you know, there's a lot of different options. Some of them are not, well, you know, native plants. They might be more problematic, like English ivy or something like that.
no.
Someone might be
Yeah.
like, oh,
They
let's
take
do
over
that. That's
everything.
and you'll
No.
get the root structure, but you're also gonna get those vines growing back up trees again.
Wrecking trees.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to get some guidance from professional services on a recommendation of how we should. Well, you know, here's what we have now. What are some things that we can do to help help the dune system?
Is that the only group that is a good idea to reach out to is the Allegan County Conservation District? Does ODC do any of that work? I don't know, just asking.
There's,
Great question.
there's organizations everywhere, not everywhere. There are ways to hydro seed trees. It's kind of like I used to say, it's a machine gun, and they do it in the Pacific Northwest. You know, like when you're driving out in the Pacific Northwest, you see Weyerhaeuser, and you see them on the sides of the hills and the mountains, and they're like that steep. You'll see a sign that says clear cut 1972 and the regrowth. So they have trucks that go around and hydro seed trees.
Okay.
And I don't know how big the plantings are. I don't know how they do it at all, but you know, I just pulled that up. There's a Colorado does it too. It's a spot in Colorado that hydro seeds trees. So you can hydro seed grass, you can probably hydro seed English ivy. And it might be just a simple way to not have a lot of different, like start at the top, work your way down, or start at the middle.
Yeah, and we'd obviously want something that's a little deer resistant or something that, you know, something to help with that.
Absolutely, deer resistance, and then, you know, maybe even just somebody to come out and take a look at the dune and say, has the erosion stopped? You know, has you know, over the years, you know, has there been enough vegetation regrowing that it might look concerning, but how big of a problem is it actually?
Okay.
You know, yeah, there's a lot of factors at play, and I'm sure that there's several companies, but I think that, you know, full disclosure, this is something that's, you know, council prioritized it. You know, staff's already at full capacity. You know, if somebody maybe would want to kind of take the lead on this, I think is back to why it's on the priority list.
Right.
If there was somebody that wanted to kind of take this and run with it a little bit, knowing kind of what those parameters are, we could certainly, it would help speed things up, certainly.
Yeah,
Laura-
I mean, I think first steps are to get the experts out there to tell us, okay, these are the things that we think are top priorities. And then we need to figure out if we want to have community effort behind this too, because I think that's something people would definitely be interested in.
Yeah,
So is
Unless it
that?
involves them trampling.
Mhm,
Right,
yeah.
we don't
Right.
want anybody to damage it, but yeah, I
The
think
deer
people
resistance
would.
is huge.
Mhm. Yeah, because I know groups have gone out and planted prior and a lot of it has been eaten by the deer. They didn't stand it, the
Twice
trees
as
didn't stand a
much.
chance.
So maybe we contact organizations like the Allegan County Conservation District first before we contact the company that actually does
Right.
restoration, because all they're gonna try to do is sell.
Lauren, when the council had this, you know, as a priority, did they give any? I was just wondering what was the context it came up
I
in?
mean, everything that Scott just said.
It's
I-
just been on the list for a while, kind of a thing, and now let's
It's
finally
just a
get it done.
priority, as in like let's not let any more erosion happen. And with the deer eating a lot of, the plantings that are out there to begin with, that's an issue too. So
Exactly. Yeah, and I think everyone's just concerned, are we, are we confident in how large of an issue this is exactly? No, and I think everyone would really, really appreciate, at the very least, knowing like, okay, the radar tower and the dome and the building up there is safe. At least knowing if that's true
yeah.
would be helpful, so.
Okay, so I guess I'm thinking as we go through these, obviously this is a council priority, so I think it's a high priority. But before we start like raising our hands, oh, let me work on that. Let's just kind of go through the list and then go back because, you can't raise your hand for 4 things. It's just be too much. So, there's going to be a lot of things that are appealing. So, but I would say that everyone would agree this is something that this group would be definitely wanting to engage on. And we'll just come back and then kind of decide, because I think at the end, we want to know, obviously, who's going to be the point person to take the lead. So this one is definitely, let's go. Invasive species, that one is a nice, broad, that could go anywhere. And probably it ties a little bit to this, what we just talked about, the revegetation. There's probably some invasive species up there, but here
Right.
again, Lauren, any context when the council said invasive species?
Yeah, just like wanting to get stuff on our website to help people know what to look for. And I know that the school website that we had, we're just hoping to maybe have something to
So-
put as a link on our
Absolutely.
website.
We need to create a new one.
Okay.
The school website was useful, but I think the chemistry teacher was paying it out of his own pocket. So there is a cost. Wix or Weebly would be the best one to do it. Wix is like the easiest drop and drag website on the planet. And it's basically $17 a month. And you get a free domain for 1 year, and then you pay for the domain later on.
Do we need a full new website or can we have links
I can't,
just that people
I can't
could?
even get into that old website.
Right, but could we
Like-
have a link to somebody else's
Yeah,
website?
well, because members, Keith, I sent you the Ottawa County Conservation District's
I did.
information, and it's really well done. It has
I like
pictures
that
with
idea,
everything.
and I've been to a
Michigan
couple of
State
those
Extension
sites,
has that.
But I think that if we pinpoint it to Saugatuck and make it really simple, you won't get lost down the rabbit hole of Michigan State, Allegan County, which you will lose interest immediately. And my idea was, Asian bittersweet. All right, you write the name invasive species, Asian bittersweet, you give 1 paragraph on why it's invasive, you give another, and you have a picture. And then you give another paragraph, how to deal with it, and then you put a link to maybe the Allegan County Conservation District after that, or at the bottom of everything. But I think if you keep it simple and somebody goes to the city website, invasive species, it will keep your interest. That's my take.
Would we need to have somebody actually then build this?
They're willing to do it.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, I do the website. So if you would like a page on the website and you vote on that, then you would get the information to me and I would build that page. That's what I do as part of my
Well,
position.
It
that's-
would be more than.
And yes, we do Weebly, and I'm following your ideas and those are all great. And that's kind of how I have the website set up. If you were to go to like some of the departments where the short-term rental page that I built, it would be similar to that. So I'd suggest you would look at the short-term rental page and see if that would be ideal for a invasive species.
That would be great, Jane.
Okay,
That's great.
all right, so let's start there.
More ideas.
And you can create as many pages as you want, right?
And I think, having
That's-
timely things like when things are, what to look for in the spring, what to look for in the fall, ways to get rid of it, in a
That's-
way that doesn't cause more problems.
So my only suggestion would be if you have somebody you're gonna appoint, a person, I don't have the time to research and get the information, but if, like, I've worked with Kelly on things with the website before, where she has just given me the verbiage and the pictures, and I just put it on the website.
Right?
That's
I'd
ideally
be
how
more
it,
than happy to do
yeah, that would be a great,
Work out
yeah,
great.
I would be more than happy to do that.
Be creative.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Jamie.
perfect.
That's great.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jamie.
Sorry.
Okay.
Well, that's great news. Thanks, Jeannie. Now, before we leave invasive species, so So the point of the website would be to educate our residents and
Correct.
so that they would have information about if they see them in their own property. Now, we still have a lot of invasive species on Saugatuck Parks. I mean, and I can specifically speak to Peterson Preserve is just overloaded with them. I've seen Japanese knotweed there, obviously purple loosestrife. ODC had actually looked at it a couple of years ago. There was Phragmites. So I was looking at invasive species as more than just let's educate residents, but let's try to figure out how to eradicate them in, in our own parks. So is that sound like a viable?
Yeah, I mean, we've done it in the
approach?
past where we've hired folks to come and treat the woolly ag.
Hemlock woolly
Adelgid.
adelgid, yeah.
Yeah. that
Adelgid?
one.
Adelgid, yeah.
Yeah, so we've actually hired people and spent money as a city to combat that in various areas. If there's something that's standing out, that also needs to be treated. The Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area, obviously, we have money
Right.
associated with that, and that could help cover the cost of invasives in that area. So,
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think, there's, a good discussion about the educational piece of it, but then there's the actual boots on the ground. How are we gonna, plan budgetary dollars for this? What's an appropriate amount for those every year that we should be treating these things? And then which ones, how would we spend those dollars? And to me, that's where, I'm not an expert in that and, I can research this stuff, but that's where, professional consultants come in, just kind of like with the Mount Bald Head restoration, if we could get some expertise in those types of fields, then I think that would help us fly high, farther and faster.
Well, I guess I'm wondering if we would want to engage, either Allegan County Conservation, ODC, and just have them do a walkthrough or whatever, and, give us a report on what they found. Would that be a reasonable approach?
yeah.
Obviously, now with the airport property, that's underway, right?
Mhm.
But that's underway,
And that,
right?
this
That would
initial
be-
one is covered under,
And the Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area, we just need to, I think we.
It's been identified, right? Who?
It has
through
been.
that process, I forget.
That
that
was
was
West-
the West Michigan,
Land
Land
Conservancy.
Conservancy of West Michigan, who
They-
came out last October and did an inventory.
But do they actually do treatments, or do they just tell you what your issues are? Do you know?
I don't know if they do invasives. I don't know if they're more tied
Yeah,
to conservation
exactly.
easements. Yeah.
So maybe we would need to circle back with them, just since they are kind of the point
Yep.
organization on that area.
Mhm.
But I guess I'm just thinking, now, when I was thinking about this, like trying to go through in my own head, what other parks would have invasives? I can't think of any in Wicks Park. I mean, our basic parks that are.
It's not,
mostly
it's not
just
usually like
grass
the
and
more
stuff.
manicured and groomed
Yeah,
areas.
it's
It's
the
like the
natural
road right of
areas.
ways and,
Oh, there you
money's
go.
on Bridge Street and Japanese knotweed and,
Mhm.
Peterson Preserve's got purple loosestrife and,
But yeah, there's what is that, State Street? I walk on that, it's oftentimes full of knotweed,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and that would be in the right of way,
so that,
right?
and we've done work before, we've got the city in our files, we have some maps that I think, we had a previous employee I worked with that did a really nice job of putting some mapping out there of where specifically knotweed is, but then that kind of comes to the question of, well, and we even got pricing from the ODC for knotweed, but it was like, well, okay, there's knotweed, but there are probably hundreds of invasive species, if not more, in the city. So which, that's where getting that advice on, how do we go about this, getting that inventory,
Mhm.
and then systematically tackling it with the dollars that we, would need to plan for. So yeah, how do we do this? And then how much does it cost? So if we could uncover that information and then, get that to, the manager and council, I think that would be really helpful.
Right, okay, so I guess then it would just be like, do we have to figure out, we talked about Allegan County Conservation for Mount Baldhead. Would we want to start with them, or do we
I
want to
think
go? with
asking,
both?
yeah, I already have a phone call in with them, but like Outdoor Discovery Center, I
I
would,
mean, I would
they
think
do
either
a lot.
one of those would be.
Yep.
And I don't know if there's pros and cons, to one or the other, but. Talk to both?
yeah, whoever's got capacity. I mean,
Yep.
this is a need that we have and it's something that council prioritized, so.
Yeah, and then we can circle back with Land Conservancy too, since they
Right.
hold the conservation easement.
Right.
for Saugatuck Harbor.
Okay, so I think that's a pretty big one. Oh, and it's really got two parts.
All right.
Yeah.
It's something else. It's not about that. It's still in base.
Okay.
So, lamp radios.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The feds have removed, I believe, the money for Lamp-A-Site, which was created in the fifties to to mitigate lamp radios, which were introduced into the Great Lakes through some ship that.
Yeah.
ballast, and which would directly affect the Kalamazoo River fishing industry, which we don't have much here, but we still have like probably half a dozen or a dozen chartered fisheries, fishermen. So it's like, I know we can't do anything about it, but council, if you guys could write a letter, state rep, national rep, because they've eradicated this program. And I believe the Great Lakes fishing industry is something like a $6 billion industry. And that's all 100% local.
I did recently send letters to Huizinga and Botkin, and they both assured me that, Great Lakes are a high priority, but, it was just, there was nothing specific.
Just the FYI.
Okay, so, I think that's definitely one we're gonna want to tackle.
Mhm.
We'll just come back to it in a minute. And then wayfinding and signage,
I may jump on.
You
this.
may.
Thank you. So this is probably best handled, we have staff's putting together a proposed budget to be reviewed and hopefully adopted by council coming up in July. And part of the budget, there's gonna be some dollars in there for wayfinding signage and but there's still some work that needs to be done at the staff level before it would get turned over to, PPW for input or does it, but ideally, I think the city manager is planning on presenting the budgetary info to council and then staff would work on getting some RFPs for potentially a logo redesign, some branding, and possible signage designs too. So without having at least that foundation of those pieces, it's probably not at the PPW committee level at this point.
yeah, and I think
I agree. That's a big project.
Yeah, it
the
is.
the only component that I thought maybe was appropriate for us now would be with Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area.
Yeah, the trails
Yes.
is
That would be.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we have the budget for that now that the management plan has been kind of.
And we're talking about
approved.
the trails at Natural Harbor. Or
Yeah, I think right now, last time I was out there, there's like these like 4-inch wide, like brown with white decal, like lettering, like trail markers. And then there's also some like 4x4 posts that are marking like the John Woolham Trail.
Mhm.
That's what we've got.
Okay.
So I think that it'd be appropriate for the PPW committee to take a look at that and see if there's, if we can do better than that.
Can we get a no dogs added to that? It is nesting season.
There is for Oval Beach.
The same should be for Harbor area, should it not?
Can you
All of us with dogs are like,
Oh,
What do you mean?
Yeah.
It's migratory season and it's nesting season.
Okay.
And everybody brings their dog to the beach and it's not allowed. So I'm not a dog person. I have cats. My cats, you can't walk
yeah,
cats.
yeah, no.
But I think that it should be policed. I mean,
Well, whoever would want to take this up could evaluate that.
no one wants to address it because everybody has dogs.
Yeah.
And everybody walks dogs at the lake, but it's really against the ordinance.
Well, okay, so we're talking about wayfinding and signage, which for Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area, it does mean you have to figure out the trails in order to be able to do the signs.
Yeah.
And so, did you have a comment?
I did. So when we talked to Land Conservancy of West Michigan last fall, he looked at inventorying invasives and also mapping. So that has been shared with the city. So we at least have a starting point for that. And now that we have the management plan back in compliance, we would have access to the dollars to be able to start that conversation, right? So
Right.
maybe we would go back to Land Conservancy, start there, and then figure out where we go from there. Because some of the issues were that new trails, since there is no signage or legitimate signage, new trails have been created that shouldn't be in existence. And
Mhm.
then there's just a lot of kind of these spider trails that shouldn't be there.
Right.
So we need to legitimize the trails that we actually want to keep people on and keep them out of other areas, right?
That's a good
Right.
point, because I,
There's some low-lying areas too, that when there's, high water levels, things like that, they disappear. So we need to make sure we're keeping that in mind when we're putting in the actual trail system.
Yeah, so I was just looking, we don't have the Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area in as a specific item on this agenda, but I would say that when we're thinking about signage, we just identified that maybe as our highest priority.
Why don't we
Or
take that
signage,
on as
but-
a project?
but
That's
it would
something as
actually be-
PPW could take on.
Right.
Right
and
now,
so it would-
because the other signage is a little bit further down the road.
Yeah.
But
So
This
it
could
would-
be something that PPW could work on.
Yep.
Right, and so this one though actually turns out to be a little bit of trail definition and then signage. Was that
Yeah.
sound right?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to re-up that project, since that is something that I've worked on for a while. It's great.
Okay. All right, just so we keep moving, because we know how our meetings can go
Appreciate it.
long. All right, what I thought we would do, I'm kind of thinking as I'm going here, but let's go through the public works ones also, because, and then maybe sort of
Mhm.
talk about who's going to do what on these things, because we would say these are probably our higher priorities, and then the other ones are, okay, now who's got time left to work on maybe some of these other, wanna do's or something like that. So.
well, I can take the lead on streetscaping,
I
just
think you
because,
can.
there's some things that we want to do out there, some areas that are in need of maintenance. And, I can, snap some photos and kind of show everybody what I'm talking about with this stuff. But, in my mind, downtown, the reality is everyone, people definitely want like the small town kind of unique features of downtown, but with so much property turnover downtown and businesses switching locations and whatnot, sometimes the landscaping out front isn't held to a solid standard, I would say. Just because, then it gets into a question of, well, does the landlord take care of it? Does the tenant? If neither one of those, view it as their responsibility, then it kind of ultimately is just left the way
Mhm.
it is. And, in my mind, people can have a different opinion, but in my mind, a more uniform streetscaping looks a lot better. And then it gives Public Works some standards in which we know exactly how to maintain it. And we're not, installing flower planters in front of, one store and not another or that type of thing. So I can take a lead on it and just kind of demonstrate what the issue is. And then there's some probably more tasteful pieces to it that I may ask for some recommendations from the PPW committee on. Because if left to me, it's probably just gonna be pretty bland and basic concrete, and tree cutouts, and that's probably about it. But if there's some other pieces to it that the group wants to weigh in on and try to,
It's kind of nice because some cities nearby have undergone some major streetscaping, renovation work. And do you see this as something that we could do immediately, or is it something that we have to wait until we're digging up Butler Street with lead service line replacement and that sort of thing?
yeah, it would be easier to do it during a massive reconstruction project,
Right.
which it kind of gets naturally done that way anyway.
Right.
But Butler Street's been on the capital improvements plan for a number of years, which by the way, that's also something that,
Yeah.
we need to get in front of this group too, is the capital improvements plan. But yeah, it
So-
could be in pieces, but
Yeah.
as we've been doing it currently, like even right down the street right here, there's like, one store owner has like a really long flower bed planter with some nice like exposed aggregate stone sidewalk. Well, if it becomes a maintenance issue and the city's tackling that, are we putting that back in there?
Right.
Or are we making it more of a standard,
Now, is this an ordinance issue as well? Like, is there anything in our ordinances that dictates?
There's
what
not
needs to
much
happen, or-
direction in the ordinance for
Okay.
this.
And then per some of these updates that you've seen in other
Yeah.
local,
So like downtown Allegan is a great place, a good example. That one is probably the closest. Downtown Hastings did a full streetscape remodel and it's gorgeous. I can get pictures from Hastings because my stepdaughter lives there and she told me she'd get pictures for us. But it's really kind of nice because it's like flower planter, bench, shaded area, tree. And then it's more of a uniform thing.
Yep.
So everybody feels like business owners kind of feel like, okay, this is what I can expect in front of my shop.
Yep.
And then, you want it to be unique, but there's aspects where you go, you know what, let's make it nice and uniformed where people can know what to expect in front of their business.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
But do we know, was that an ordinance that
there's not.
drove
No,
that?
there,
So
there
that
aren't,
was just
it
not-
doesn't really outline standards for.
But
for-
should there be? Is that your question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
I
just
just think
wondering, how do
it's
you
probably a
actually pull
bid
that
that
across
would
the
go in
finish
front
line?
of council to say, you know, here's this bid of, you know, some streetscaping ideas and then
Yeah.
several bids that what it would look like this, and then it could look like this, and then it could look like this, and then council decides. You know, so you could get like 3 different models or examples of streetscape you're interested in.
Yeah, and this really is like a long-term game.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. I mean, this stuff, just because if we put some standards in place, it doesn't mean that's, you know, we're gonna execute on that right away or right now. It's still gonna be kind of piecemealed together, like as a need arises or a maintenance issue surfaces, then, you know, or a trip hazard or something like that, or tree root is buckling the.
You don't
concrete.
want to do it twice, right?
Right, yeah, and so that's, you know, it would happen naturally when road projects are getting done, or if there's a maintenance issue. And then over time, hopefully it's more uniform.
Would you think there's anything like on a shorter term basis that we could tackle just so we clean it up a little bit maybe? You know, before, because it could be a couple of years or more before we would be into a major.
You have to think about that a little. I mean, like Douglas, they have some really nice, like dedicated flower planters where like the
love
garden club
Douglas.
volunteers their time.
I love those.
They
areas.
also bury their utilities on Center Street.
I'm not sure.
Oh, that's-
But, Consumer seems reluctant for some reason to bury utilities other than on Park Street this year, but,
All right.
Okay, well, is anyone interested in collecting information, like
Yeah, I would
getting
love to.
information from a place like Hastings
It-
or?
It would,
even
yeah, or
to, you know,
Allegan, it
yeah.
would be, it
I'd
would be
be happy
great to
to,
see
yeah.
some really inspirational photos. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy.
yeah, and like Allegan, that's probably the most aggressive example that we've seen where like they like literally took out every tree in their downtown area and people are like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And then they reconstructed it and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to gather some photos of kind of things that I've seen that look really nice.
What it
That'd be
could look
helpful.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
I really
great.
doubt that we're gonna, you know, given our current project list and our capital improvements plan, I doubt that we're in a position to or at least Public Works wouldn't be in a position to recommend moving forward with trying to recreate something that's out there. We just want some standards that we know how to maintain this stuff.
Okay. Yep,
Okay, playground spinner.
love this. This is fun.
Yes.
Still out
Oh,
there.
the Lawrence Day. no.
Well,
No.
it's more like where you tell me it's.
Right,
it's
I
gonna Be
know.
a good spot, you know?
I had said, when Scott and I were talking, I had said, oh, this seems like an easy one. And then I had to correct myself. There's nothing that's ever easy. So.
I know that we talked, what's clear is it is not going on the north side of the Village Square playground.
Can't
Crystal
pick it-
clear,
yeah.
not going there.
Structure.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's, so I know that we've talked about Oval Beach before, which is a good idea. I don't know that I'm sold on it just because,
If not
don't know where-
oval, where would you think?
well, that's where I was really hoping that someone would kind of take a step back, look at the big picture and
Mm.
take a lead on where that might go. But, and if that decision leads back to Oval Beach, so be it. But
What's your hesitancy for oval?
the sand, blasting, the powder coated playground piece out there, the slope, there really aren't many flat places and it's a shifting dune. So what you see today is going to look different 5 years from now. So how is that going to impact, the spinner? I don't know. It becomes kind of a maintenance issue of leveling out the dunes. And then that always kind of makes people shriek because we're dune grass and it's protected.
Mhm.
So, but
Well-
I'm not saying that I'm not against the Old Beach. I just, I think about some things too, like, we have the Saugatuck Wilds Nature Preserve.
Well, that's what, actually, I was just thinking if we were brainstorming, is it possible, right, to think about it at Saugatuck Wilds, just
We
by the
could-
parking area?
We could
or
recommend
something?
it to go any,
I mean, and that's not to say, let's vote on that. Let's just say that's an option. I see some, not looking real enthused about it from you.
I don't
Keith.
want to make it a playground.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like if you get there with your kids and they're gonna hike, but yet you want them also to have something that they find more entertaining. I know sometimes when I say to my grandkids, let's go hiking
I
there.
understand what
There.
you're saying. To me, there are other places to find it more entertaining.
Yes,
Like-
but like what, though? I mean, I'm trying to
Like
think
the
of.
playground.
I
No.
know.
well, we can't
Or
put it at
Wicks
the
Park
playground.
area, like they have the gazebo and all that there, that could be, like, if there's an area in there, it might be.
Wait, the problem is like the root bases there, don't you think? With like, I've gone and stood and
With that
looked at where
tree.
the trees
Well,
are and
Yeah,
with what you need to put that in, I'm unsure.
Yeah,
If it
well,
would fit,
yeah,
yeah,
and I-
although with music in the park and everything, I mean, I think it would
And-
be wonderful to have something of interest.
Right.
All the kids do is climb that tree that like if you're.
Yes.
Left-hand side, I
And
mean,
yeah,
every
they're
kid
not
is. fine.
supposed to, no.
Yeah, my biggest thing was always
But-
to try to give them something else to do besides climb that tree. My
Right.
kids
Yeah.
climbed that tree. I
know.
have pictures of
Oh.
them in the tree, all naughty, but
So,
if there was something else for them to do, I mean, that's great. It's just,
yeah, the issue is the size,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Of like.
How
much
big is
space.
yeah, and my issue would be like, I go to that park just to relax
yeah.
and,
People would say that about that one and Coughlin Park.
yeah, no, I would say Coughlin
Mount
doesn't have.
Baldhead is a worthy, candidate at least to take a look at, just because
Oh.
it doesn't, that park needs a lot of work. And we don't know what that looks like quite yet. So it's not too early to, we haven't gone through with like a design for the lower parking lot area of that park. There's pros and cons to the pavilion.
Do people use the pavilion?
You know, they do on occasion.
Like field trips,
It's
schools
huge.
do.
Yeah.
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 I've seen people,
Right.
using the grills in there and,
If we,
Good idea. I mean, there's the little museum.
kind of
out there.
underutilized, actually.
Yeah.
It is.
I
Okay.
like the idea. Would it have to be something where we have to wait until we kind of figure out more what we're doing there? Or is it something that we could, because it would be nice if
It's
we could,
worth researching,
Yeah.
you know?
it'd be nice if we could do this. We've got the thing.
Yeah,
You know,
so what we could do is if someone's interested in this one, you could talk to Sinclair and find out approximately what size we need to dig out in terms of,
The
you know,
cement.
putting this in, yeah. So then you could sort of have that in your headspace as you're going around and just walk through the different park spaces and report back and say, hey,
Yeah.
these are the things that I think might be the most viable.
Yeah, and then part of that conversation might be too, is it possible to, like Sinclair would know this, like, is it possible, you're right, like, we don't have a design for Mount Baldhead. One of the, questions that might arise would be, well, is the spinner gonna, kind of stop us from doing any future planning or
that's all.
how much is it, what's involved to relocate it too? Is it possible to relocate something like this? And if so, like, what's a shoot from the hip estimate on what that might cost? That would be good information to know. That way, if it's like, well, we can relocate this thing for, $2,000, then it clearly shouldn't get in the way of any project updates that we plan on in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah, I like that. Because
And it might put people at ease, like, you're gonna put a new thing somewhere that, wait, we can undo it. It's just, this is what we're recommending.
Is there a swing set at Mount Baldwin?
Nope.
At Oval Beach, they have one, but.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never seen
Okay,
So anyone interested in that?
all right, so
it. Do that. I can reach out. I don't have their contact information. but
Okay,
I'm
so-
fine with-
I can connect you.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
okay, so I guess I was saying, maybe if we, let's, before we go on, if we go through these and say, okay, who's interested in working on, a particular thing? So we make sure that we don't use up our bandwidth down here. that we,
I'm on
you know.
streetscaping,
Okay, so
Yep, I'm
Lauren,
on,
playground spinner.
I'm on the signage for Sagatuck Harbor.
I'll do the invasive species website.
and I wanted to do the invasive species over, like overall, as far as what's going on with the rest of the parks and street, right of ways and all that
That
kind of
go
thing.
into the vegetation at Mount Baldhead or?
It, yeah, I think it could. So I could basically kind of say,
And I'm happy to help you with that too,
put,
the Baldy stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, obviously, if it's something, it's a council priority, it's parks really, like, obviously, I'm a resource for all this too, so.
right. Well, yeah, don't worry.
We can set up the meetings and obviously you wouldn't be there to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah, or we'll make sure you know what's going on. Maybe there's somebody on your staff you want to
Yeah,
get involved. Okay, all right, then now that's great. Okay, so now if we look at our PPW charter, other possibilities. And I think it's amazing that we actually have property acquisition as something that we can pursue. So,
if I could just jump in, this is just very generally speaking. So, like, obviously, any sort of property acquisition, like, serious conversations about it would have to, be stemmed from the city manager and council, it would, so, this is just very generally speaking, if opportunities exist out there, some informal conversations, or just at least some thought-provoking ideas, could be on our radar. That's all, but nothing, you know, any specifics, just, I would encourage anyone to, you know, if there's a specific property, I would encourage somebody to maybe just go run the idea by the city manager.
Okay.
And then Kelly and I talked about just making sure our easements are clearly defined. And is there a way for us to make sure those easements are clearly defined so development doesn't accidentally happen on an easement that has been established? I don't know how, I mean, I always refer to John Vanderbeek because he always seems to know where those are, but is there a way to make sure that development doesn't happen over easements that have been?
If you remember,
drawn
we
up?
started a spreadsheet on this with Helen,
Oh, nice.
probably a year ago. And you had gone ahead and looked up all the different parcel numbers.
Yeah, I
So we
still
have
have.
that. So we have that started in terms of all the parks and the parcel numbers, the acreage, all of that. And then the next step would be to say, okay, do we want to hire a consultancy to actually, you know, look at the boundaries or, you know, pull more mapping or
Yeah, we
places that
do
we're
have a lot of
concerned about.
properties.
It was a lot, yeah.
So individual surveys would be interesting to get.
You mean like to survey the various parks and make sure we know?
If there were concerns. So right now, there's some development on the side of John Woolham Trail. And, you know, that's always been just open forest and that obviously belongs to someone. But that's being built and that's a public asset on the other side. So you just want to make sure everything's
And
good.
Like the Sugar Hill development, is that what you're talking about next to
It's called, I
John?
was just hiking. I mean, this was a while back. I
Up
think,
Vine
I think
Street?
I actually sent you a snapshot of the stakes that were back there. Just
And
'cause-
that is not dune grass, it's the one to the south of it.
Yeah, that actually enters off of Park Street. And I'm not implying in any way that
No, I
there
know.
is encroachment going on.
Making sure.
But because we do have all of these properties, you just want to make sure that,
And so the zoning dude would have a zoning map. What's his name, Zach?
Luke.
Luke,
Yeah.
thanks. I knew it
Me
was
too.
4 letters. Um, supposed to be up on that. And especially if there's
Maybe still-
Permitting
maybe the
involved.
spreadsheet has, if, as long as that spreadsheet has been shared with
Oh,
Luke, maybe that's just.
I'll
Why don't we
some
just do
good
that?
information.
I know we haven't.
Okay.
I
that's
got it.
That's
good.
what-
remember.
Okay, yep, I'm
So-
happy to do that.
Could you copy me in on that too?
Yep,
just
yeah,
to-
perfect.
Yep.
So you're gonna do that?
Yep.
This would be so,
Find it.
this would be so we're clear on what is our,
Okay, got it
Like
right
it.
here.
yeah, right? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm. And it's, right, and were you thinking of anything else, Lauren, when you
Nope.
brought it up? That's what you
Nope.
meant? Okay.
Yep.
I was thinking sometimes people forget where the easement is on the road. and they
Yeah,
Take it over, but no, okay, we don't need to get into that.
yeah.
Okay, native plantings, pocket prairies. Well, you know, that's my sweet spot there. And I'll just ask, did anybody watch 60 Minutes on Sunday?
Yes.
They had the great thing about the monarchs.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
It was amazing.
And, it was a great piece,
Incredible.
about monarchs. And they even talked there about, putting in these, I don't know if they use the term pocket prairie, but, it was the same kind of an issue, basically.
Was it milkweed that they?
Yeah,
milk- you have to-
milkweed,
yeah,
there
you
were
have-
other
A ton of
suggestions.
milkweed. I
Yeah.
am winning.
Don't cut it down.
Yeah, don't.
Funny enough, I don't. Yes.
It'll come back.
Yeah, trust me, I let it grow and now, but anyway, just in conjunction with that.
Just as a clarification point, like up at the pallet sign right now, for example, we have some like juniper trees in the background that are like kind of half dead. I know like in the language in the ordinance, PPW is to review like landscaping and feedback is welcomed. But in my mind, if we just have like a simple replacement, like we had to cut a tree down in Wicks Park, it was half dead and we're replacing it. If it's like replacing what's existing, I hope that Public Works could just move forward and do that just to keep our current park system, looking really at its best. But if it comes to like park, re-renovations or like if you want to add a pocket prairie or something like that, or convert some park space into something else or more of, hopefully that's where the Parks and Public Works Committee could make that recommendation. Does that make sense from like a practical standpoint of kind of how we tackle landscaping in our parks?
No, I think every time you want to replace a bush, you should bring it to us. I think I got where you're coming from.
Well, I just don't want to be like, whoa, you guys, cut this tree down, or, took this,
But how about if we
plants
just,
out and-
yeah, if we gave guidance to say we really encourage as many native plantings as possible, as long as it's appropriate for the spot?
Mm.
Would you be okay with that?
yeah, just know that almost very little at nurseries is native. So like
Crazy.
if we're actually, we can always evaluate if there's a substitute. But
But
it's,
who's helpful is Allegan County Conservation.
Mm.
They have a tree and shrub sale every spring and
Oh, that's nice.
Ottawa County.
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
and they
good to know.
and they also do flowers and grasses, and that'll be a little bit later. And I've bought things from them before.
See,
uh,
this is what I learned when I. became
And,
part of the-
and it's, and it's great, and it's just, they've got that new conservation site building and everything, and that's where they,
Where's that located?
oh, it's in the county. I don't know.
In Allegan?
It's in
Or-
Allegan
yeah,
County.
no, but is it in the city of Allegan?
No,
Okay.
it's kind of out there where there's a
Okay.
bunch of open space and crossroads, and I have no idea. But,
I got it.
But.
There is a library discussion this
Oh,
week,
that's right,
Thursday, yeah.
Thursday.
Which,
It's
yeah,
person
I'm
from
gonna
our
go to
Land
that.
Water group that is leading that. So it'll
And-
be a talk on native species.
Yes.
Yep.
It's 10
And-
a.m., right? Or something?
No, it's.
no, it's
evening.
at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock.
It's
or
evening, I
something.
know, 'cause
Yeah,
I have something in the morning, and I was like, no, I can still do that.
Okay.
So are you saying that, like, as far as like pocket prairies go, do you want to
I,
take the lead on kind of recommending if there's a way to incorporate one?
I would
And-
love to do that, yeah. And, I've mentioned before that, I made a little trial run at this little space in Peterson Preserve that before was just a weed patch. And so, Scott gave me permission to go out and just put
Yeah.
some things in there, which my daughter-in-law helped me. We did it last fall. Now, it takes some time sometimes for these native plantings to really show off, but, that's kind of my pilot project on that.
Mm.
But I would say, as we think about, I would like to be able to think about other spaces, consult with you, then maybe bring it back to the committee about what do you think about, trying to put one in here or there kind of a thing, and maybe how we go about it.
and how to recommend to people, where to find the information. Like my husband, we're going because he wants to put one on our property. So, like we have a little pond, off to the side of our pool that we didn't even know the pond was there because everything was so overgrown when we bought the house, but it's a beautiful little pond. And so we want to put one there, but,
Mhm.
and that's why we're going
Hmm.
to hear.
Well,
how
and that
to
would
do
be the
this.
other, point with these pocket prairies. They could also, I think they'd be educational, so we'd
Yeah.
ultimately want,
Yeah.
have some signage, here's the plant.
Tying back to the website.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
can invite the community to help and
Yes,
do some
yes,
educational piece
and-
on that as well. So yeah,
Um,
I think it's amazing.
And I belong to this group called Wild Ones, and they're really a nationwide organization with various chapters. They have a chapter in Grand Rapids, and they also have one in Kalamazoo. And so I had read on their website, they even have a thing where you can apply for a grant and get kids involved. in that,
Oh,
So I'd
that's
love to
great.
see it go down that path as well.
Sure.
Okay, so, okay, Cook Park review. I put that on there just because I thought, well, with the willow tree gone, let's just say that, I always wondered, what's the point of that park? Other than that beautiful willow tree. And so would it be, and now we know that we're going to do this temporary art installation, which I think is going to be fabulous. But, I've also always noticed that there's all these, nice, beautiful tables that sit there by the boardwalk. And they say those are for the yacht club.
Yeah,
And
at
that-
least that.
Yeah, and that's always,
Kind of, they own it.
do they really own it?
and- Yeah.
Because I've always heard they leased it, and I always thought, well, no.
So
where's
the
park?
yacht
Where's
club
the-
and the Butler, it's all one property that they own, and the city is allowed to use the boardwalk because of that, but it's their property.
And all the grassy area is theirs
Where the
as
picnic
well.
tables are.
Where the picnic
yeah.
tables are. That's not actually part of Cook Park. then.
No, it's part of their agreement.
Okay.
yeah, That they can put their,
Well,
Where
is
is Cook's then? I mean, what's the delineation of?
Well, that would go back to maybe what we just talked about with trying to figure out what our boundaries are.
Mhm.
it? We have the sidewalk, we have the
I mean,
tree.
it's basically everything is not the boardwalk. So like Jones Park and the information booth, the green space over there up to the south edge of the parking lot over here on Water Street. That's all city-owned property.
Okay.
Because I know there's a giant sign there that says Singapore Yacht Club, and I thought, well, is
Mhm.
that on the park or is that on their property?
It's
Probably in the park.
the Butler and the Singapore Yacht Club are part of all of that.
But it's, they actually own it, not the city. So it's
Yeah.
not like they're
We
leasing
don't
it
own
from
the
us.
boardwalk. They do.
No, but I mean.
But
the
they
grad-
allow us to use it because of certain
Which-
negotiations.
So let's
Which
not ask
which
any
I don't want to get
questions.
those, I don't want to upset those because that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Okay, well
Yep.
then maybe what we would just say, the first thing we need to know is how big of that, how much of
Yeah,
that,
like,
that
what is
area is ours
Right.
to think about.
Mhm.
Okay, so, let's see. That was. That came under,
PPW charter C.
Yeah,
yes,
Scott,
proper, okay, is
for
that's
the
you, you're gonna
park,
figure that out.
just don't give up on
Wait.
us with the Willow. Yeah, we're still working on. doing
Oh,
something with
stump.
it.
Oh, the
Yeah.
stump.
But I
So-
hope someone, I
Yeah,
have had
we're
to
still
tell
working on
people,
that, so don't give up.
I've had people up there eyeing up all the burls coming off of that thing, like, can I just chainsaw one of them off of there? And I'm like, no.
Not yet,
So
not yet.
it's still,
Yeah.
Working on
it's yours until I hear
Trying to
otherwise, so,
Figure out if we can do something with it.
good.
And I've got baby willows from that.
Oh, I love that.
Mine started to sprout too, out of a little glass. I haven't planted it yet, but yeah. So it is,
Okay.
that willow tree is still alive.
I've got a lot.
Nice.
When you're ready, I'll put one in your backyard.
I already have a willow in my backyard.
Mhm.
Yeah, you should see it. It's probably a descendant of that thing and a bird pooped over it in the back of my property. or something.
Okay, so we just, okay, I'm sorry, I got myself confused here. So we talked about that we were gonna try to figure out our easements and our boundaries of our parks. Where was that under?
We did that under property acquisition.
Okay, so that's
Right.
basically that, and
Just
that,
know
and
our
that, so the
easements
Cook
and
Park
agreements, yeah.
review will just be a subset of that until we find out how much of
Okay.
Cook Park we actually have to work with.
A little over an acre. I think it's 1.1 acres. It's 3 kind of different
I mean,
parcels.
You know,
put
maybe we
together.
could put little stakes out there or something.
You need to see it. I can pull it up.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd
Yeah,
love
that'd be great. Let's see how we
Give
doing
me
on
a
time.
second. I'm just working with somebody in a special event for over there, and I sent a screenshot of about their property in the park, so I'm just gonna pull that email up, but you guys continue talking.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right, so then let's just go ahead and talk about dark skies research. So,
Yeah, so this is something that I thought we might be able to get involved with. I mean, I did sort of start by looking up to see if we have any city ordinance that even is related to streetlights, and we don't. I mean, we don't own the streetlights. I think Consumers Energy does, so any issues or anything like that with the streetlights, we do have to go through them, but I didn't find anything specific to responsible lighting. But I mean, essentially the idea, because personally, across the street from my house, there was an upgrade to a streetlight few years ago. It had been out for several months, and then all of a sudden it's blaring into the house, and we weren't used to having that, didn't like it, so, that's sort of what prompted the idea, after hearing about some other people in the community that had some similar concerns. There is an entity called Dark Skies International that I follow, and have links and information to, what sort of information that they provide. And we could do something as simple as just, similar to the invasive species, page that we're talking about adding, doing something to communicate to people on responsible lighting. I think really for me, it's just about awareness, because I didn't realize how much artificial lighting does sort of impact the ecosystem, migratory birds, mating, all kinds of things in sort of wildlife communities are impacted by artificial light. So they have a lot of great information at Dark Skies International about small things cities can do. There's like 5 principles of responsible lighting. They have very good kind of off the shelf communications that you could provide to your community on stuff like this. So it would be really easy for us to be able to get the word out and provide some guidance to people who are looking for it, and maybe outline some of the implications that occur because of too much artificial lighting. And then, you know, to go beyond that would probably require some sort of intervention of city ordinances or something like that. Like, can we dim streetlights at a certain time? Can we replace certain lighting? Can we have an ordinance that has some input from the city regarding signage and things like that as they're getting renewed? So a lot of this work has already been done by Dark Skies International. So all I did was kind of pull that site and start reading through it, and they have a lot of cut and paste stuff we could use to communicate. So I think it would be easy for us to be able to at least get the word out to people. I don't know, you know, if we could do anything more than that, but
Judy,
would
was
at
there
least
a
be place to
week-long
start.
thing that was
It's
supposed?
this week.
It's this week.
Yeah, this is International Dark Skies Week.
I was gonna say, that would be a great opportunity.
Right,
to
it
do
would have
like
been,
a-
and I think initially we were gonna talk about this last time, that was in my charter, that the Dark Skies Week is actually this week. Yeah,
But this,
I think.
but, and it's too bad that we missed it, but you know, as I get older, next year I'll be here for you know it. You know, it would give us a lot of time to kind of prepare, you know, like get some publicity or communication out about this, get people maybe a little excited about it. And then we could,
We
you know,
could plan like a stargazing evening during Dark Skies Week for the
Right.
community or
Awesome.
something like that. There would be, you know, things we
Right.
could do next year,
just
but
to-
at least to get the awareness.
Yeah, we need to start building awareness so we can make people, I think, you know, conscious of it. And it's not just city lighting. I mean, you know, I think it's residents too. I mean,
Residential lighting.
we
there's-
are
yeah.
guilty. We have this light that goes up trees and I keep telling my husband, turn them off. And,
Yeah,
You know, so.
maybe we could partner with another organization to help with that. Yeah.
Right, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of information out there, so like.
You
I'm
know, maybe
happy
we
to-
could do like, I don't know if the library would want to sponsor it, but you know, like they're doing this thing on, you know, the native plantings.
Yeah,
Maybe they
it could
could
be
have somebody come
somebody-
in from Dark
yeah.
Skies.
That'd
And
be
that,
great.
Yeah.
you know, that would publicize it and get people, you know, I think just first we need to build awareness. you
Right.
know.
So
I
why don't
agree.
we plan on starting with education and we
Yeah.
could do, you know, one event, we could partner with the library, make it try community.
Yeah,
And then we
That'd be
could
great.
put a couple things out through city, which like Jamie said, we send the content over and send it out and see what the response is.
I
yeah,
love it.
sounds good.
Okay,
So thank you. That's great.
kayak launches. Keith?
We have a lot of street ends. I bring it up all the time. We could
Right.
use, I don't know if they're reconditioning Chain Ferry. That'd be a great spot. The lawn trend that we have over, next to the old Gleason grocery store. That'd be an awesome spot. To,
Well, what? would
Where's
we-
that?
rent.
You mean Spear Street boat launch? That
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
Okay.
So Gleason's, I'm an alter guy.
What would we
could
need to
we have,
do?
we have a small little spot across the river that, I don't know if is it leased now?
The only problem is there's no parking there.
Well, it doesn't mean somebody can't just drop off the kayak.
Yeah.
You know, and I know parking is an issue everywhere, but,
Yeah.
and, we have any other launch?
I see most people do it at Spear Street, you know, when they, you know, that's kind of where I guide people to go because I don't know where else to send them, but it seems to be a decent spot, but it's not like an official kayak launch type
How
thing.
far,
Yeah.
do we go all the way to the seawall or is that where Bayside Inn is? You have the launch ramp.
Yeah, that whole seawall is about to, Francis Street,
Yeah.
Francis and Water, yeah,
Yeah.
that all the way up to the seawall.
So
is ours.
they don't rent.
It's the same as all of our other street end, license agreements that it's split usually 50-50 with the neighboring.
Somebody is
property.
paying to use that in
So
essence.
We couldn't theoretically, we couldn't
No.
even, in
No.
essence,
No.
do a thing to it.
No,
Not at this point, no.
And
they
it-
sign all those street I send all those street ends out and they sign and they are allowed to do
Yeah, they pay
with
for it.
this. What they do
Right.
with the street ends, we can't really write in that.
So we don't have very many options as far as a kayak launch. You know what they look like? They're just like
Yeah, and
plastic.
is
things.
there any area near the Shoppers dock? I mean, that's another,
Yeah, I mean, this is tough. It's not, it's not, this is kind of an add-on and nice to have. That's not really something that staff's gonna be able to spend time on. Not saying it's not a good cause, but, we're pretty loaded right now with,
but we can seek out grants. I mean, if,
Well,
you know,
there's
if
nowhere
you
to
can look
put
up
it, that's the
grants.
thing.
Well, I think by the Shoppers dock is probably a decent
Which dock?
thought, the Shoppers dock.
Yeah.
Coughlin Park.
um,
I mean, being that it's a pretty good public spot there.
So is Spear Street not accessible then?
It's a,
thought it was.
it's a boat launch. So I don't know, if it could be configured in a way that is more,
yeah, we
I mean, we
have,
have to use it as a boat launch, but
right. We have a plan right now to kind of refurbish that area with what it's not, a kayak launch isn't built into that plan. What is built into it is just, making sure that the stormwater gets directed, more efficiently to the river right there. There's a weird catch basin and then there's like some broken up concrete, that's been placed there and it just kind of looks unsightly. So the work that we're doing is more about, stormwater, appearances and, updated signage.
That's why I asked if no one puts, if the Bayside Inn doesn't put a boat at the seawall right there. And when you reconstruct it, if you take the broken concrete out, that's a perfect spot for a kayak launch on the other side of the.
like
water.
between the barge and the Bayside Inn? Is that what you're talking?
We
about?
don't have any, it's leased out and we have we don't have a say in. how
So
it's
even the launch ramp is leased out.
The Spear Street one is public, but the Star of Saugatuck is in charge of collecting the funds for us,
Okay.
for the city.
You just said that.
Well,
No matter how I ask the question, it's the same answer.
may,
A
Uh,
lot of agreements all over the world. Is what we're saying. There's a lot of
But
agreements.
that being said,
So the perfect spot would be.
maybe
down
the Shoppers dock, area by
Shoppers
Coughlin.
dock?
That's what they called it when they first put it in.
There was the dinghy dock before that and then the shopper dock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so people, transients from, can dock there and shop in town
I use it
or
all the time.
dine. Yeah.
That's a hard spot to put a launch ramp.
it
Yeah,
does seem
yeah.
like it would,
Be
yeah, I'm
impossible.
trying to visualize it. Would that be? are you-
And there's also some options over in Douglas that exist already, and there's places all along the river where you already have, it's a good idea, it's just as far as something happening, this year, at this point, like it'd be a no on my end, but that's not to say, I tell no people all the time and their next option is to go to the city manager and.
Well, right, but I mean, you just said these areas are leased, but aren't they annual leases?
Yes,
So, like I
Yeah,
said,
it-
a year rolls around in a hurry.
except for the fire department and the sheriff's department have 10-year lease agreements with us. Everyone else is really.
I mean,
So
I
if we
never-
identified
I'd never ask
something-
anybody to break a lease, but you could,
Oh, you
you could redesign it. So that somebody could launch
Mm-hmm.
where that broken up concrete is.
Yeah.
When it is redesigned to launch.
Right, and then just know that, when we think about what comes up next year, I mean, that's gonna take a while to do anyway. Like, to me, something that we're working on it now and don't think it's gonna happen for a year, that's good. I mean,
Mhm.
that's quick.
Yeah,
Those are all definitely set for the year, so.
Yeah, so we're set for the year, but we could.
I
start-
agree with you.
Yeah, we could start.
So does
planning.
someone want to take that on, say, just identify different places and that would be easy
I
to
could do
vet
that.
through Jamie, right? Where you would say, okay, it's a 1-year lease. That's something that potentially could become an accessibility point. Cause that's.
We're not,
you know,
staff's not gonna work on it unless we get a directive from the city manager or council.
Yeah, I'm saying
Period.
outside of season.
Right, but this is back to one
This
of these
is not
secondary
urgent.
things where we're researching it, we're coming up with ideas, recommendations. It doesn't mean they're gonna go anywhere, but
Right.
if,
Okay.
if something doesn't work on it.
That's-
Okay,
Yeah, if you feel, if you want a copy of one of those little street and license agreements too, I can I can send it
Yeah.
over to Keith if that's something you wanna look at, just to see what they are, what they say, you know, I can get you those recommendations.
Okay, that's like that, thank you.
Okay, so I think we've figured, these are all the potential projects area. Is there anything I think we could say anything we've missed? We have plenty. I don't think we need to bring up anything else. Okay, all right. So just to maybe, make sure we're clear, or I could do this at the end of the meeting. Let's do that. Okay, tree work, tree plantings. Okay. That's you.
Yeah, I can take this over. So I mentioned it before, every year, we go through and do a tree risk assessment, compile a list throughout the year of trees of concern. We consult with an arborist and do a tree risk assessment. And then from that list, and keeping in mind our budgeted dollars for it, we'll tackle and remove the most hazardous trees out there. And so this year it was a list of, we ended up taking down 9 trees. Some of them were high priority, which we use consultants to do. And then a few of them were just trees that were unsightly, like the one at Wicks Park. And it was like half dead in the canopy and it wasn't a very big size. There weren't any conflicting overhead utilities. And so we just took it down and got it replaced. So, or are getting it replaced. So this year we're planting, we're picking them up on Wednesday. We're replanting 9 different trees in the city. So if you have any questions about the specifics of those, by all means, let me know.
In my neighborhood, you took down a bunch of trees. Are you replanting up there?
Are you talking about on Main Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was one at
Faded.
341 Main that's getting replaced with a sugar maple, which was there. And then 433 Main, we took down a silver maple. That one's getting replaced with another silver maple. We don't have that many of, yeah. It's part of diversity with our tree species out there, but and then there's pros and cons to every kind. And then you had another one about Grand Street. So 309 Grand, that one, the property owner did reach out. It's always kind of fun to work with the property owner. And we decided that we'd plant a hackberry tree at that location.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
There could go
So we
out.
have a tree, I don't know if it's on your radar, but there is a huge hollowed out tree on Campbell Road, right at McVeigh. Like if you're driving on McVeigh, you'd run right into it on that dune. And it's gonna pull down all of the power lines.
I think Helen brought that up to me.
I sent her a
It's
picture.
not ours.
It's not.
no.
Douglas's?
Yeah,
So send it to Doug.
actually, that one might even be on private property.
Yeah.
It's either Douglas's or private property, but it's not ours.
Well, somebody's gotta do something. So I'll contact, so who in Douglas? they don't have a PPW, so just
Just reach
their
out to their
city?
city hall.
Okay.
They've got
Go to the
a
manager.
code enforcer that is, I hear, really good at it.
In addition to the tree plantings, we also, this week is Arbor Day. We have an annual celebration. It's not, there's no tickets, there's no sales. We're lucky if we get some involvement whatsoever at these things. But we do have an Arbor Day celebration because this year's our 20th anniversary year for being Tree City USA through the Arbor Day Foundation. And I thought with all the attention and heartbreak that occurred with the black willow tree at Cook Park, why not make that one the Arbor Day tree this year? So that is the Arbor Day tree this Friday at 10 a.m. If you can make it, please join us.
Yes.
Please
Yes.
join us. We need everyone that we can get at these things.
It's right there.
Yep, right there.
What are we planting?
So I know that I tried to do you a favor and I looked hard for a willow tree. Black willow tree, which is what was there. They're kind of an undesirable tree. It'd be kind of the equivalent of going to a nursery and asking to buy crabgrass. It's just not something that people carry. So then weeping willow becomes the next best option. And I could not locate a weeping willow that would be fitting. I think per our ordinance, I have to plant a certain size tree and it's not the little, 5-gallon pots. But I consulted with Eric Morrow over at Great Lakes Ornamentals. If you don't know him, he's a great guy, very knowledgeable. And we still wanted to meet some basic criteria. So it's pretty poor draining soil over there. That's why the willow tree thrives. So that can eliminate a lot of more desirable species. And so we want it to be full canopy, reach, 80 to 100 feet tall at maturity. Ideally, it'd be fast growing like the willow tree was.
Suck up water.
And yep. So for that reason, we landed on a Princeton American elm. So take a look at those. They're really cool trees. This one that we located was a 4-inch diameter, which is a pretty good sized tree. I think it's 4-inch diameter and 18 feet tall from the start. So it's a little bit bigger than the trees that we normally plant. But I'm looking forward to get that. It's not one that we commonly plant along our streetscaping or anything, so it's always kind of fun to plant one in the ground and see how it does.
And so is this, I mean, obviously, we all know about Dutch elm disease and all that. Is this a tree that, I mean, that is kind of, we can start to plant elms again? Or is this one that's like a resistant or?
Yeah, this one's resistant to it. So
Yeah.
that was the first question that I had too.
Right.
What about Dutch elm disease? And this thing-
Exactly.
And since, since that time when Dutch elm disease really kind of wreaked havoc on the population, there's been some other kind of varieties that have been bred to have the resistant properties to that. So that's what this Princeton American elm is. And it's not to say that I couldn't get it, but it is resistant to it.
Well, I think that's great because, obviously to have an elm tree, again, would be wonderful.
Mhm.
So, good job.
Cool. Please join us on Friday.
10 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay, keeping us moving, historical marker at Coughlin Park. That's you too, Scott?
Sure, yeah. So this has been a multi-year project that this city has collaborated with the historical center on, and you've seen them all over town. So
They're great.
people really like them. There's one right outside the window right here. There's some over at Wicks Park. I think council just approved this one here at Coughlin Park, as well as the one over at Village Square by in the tennis court area quadrant. So this particular historical marker would go over and replace the stormwater. It's kind of dated sign over at the northeast corner of Coughlin Park.
Right.
And so that one will get pulled out, and then the historical center or historical society will pour a concrete pad and put a new sign in that.
Do you know the topic of this one?
Yeah, this one
It was the potty
puts
paint.
detailed
right?
information in there about the Harris Pie Factory, and then
Factory.
also the what is it called?
There's
The
some
Blue
kind of-
Tempo Jazz Club.
Yeah.
So, which was yeah, it's kind of a LGBTQIA plus type of environment, from what I understand. I don't know a whole lot about it. Hopefully you can learn more from the sign that gets installed.
Exactly.
So,
Great. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, council approved it already. We just wanted to have this as a touch point, just to make sure there weren't any, red flag objections to it, but.
It's great.
While we're on signs then, we're gonna get one at the playground?
That is still in conversation.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so moving on to project updates. Saugatuck Wilds Nature Preserve.
Isn't that cool to have that as
Yes.
an official
Yeah.
name?
Yeah. So let's,
So council was very receptive to the name that we suggested, and they went with our top choice. So,
and thank you, Kelly, for leading that effort. And, I think it was a little bit of a team effort, but you really deserve the recognition.
and furthermore, I don't know if you've been down 63rd Street, but Nate from the ODC came and got a key from me for the gate. They've started, it looks like they put in an asphalt milling driveway already over there. Yep, so they have begun work, and hopefully they can, now that they have the name, they can move forward with signage, and we can get that opened up to the public this spring.
Great. It's great.
Right, and I had asked Scott just, who monitors that or whatever, who's the contact, and it'll be Scott with ODC. And when he needs help from us, he'll let us know.
Yep. Take it from there.
Village Square Courts,
Yeah, so April 1st, Fleece and Vanderbrink did get the DNR passport grant application submitted. And so the timeline of it, I did reach out and just kind of wanted to get a feel for it. The DNR will do preliminary scoring of our application, and we should hear back about that preliminary scoring late summer, early fall. And that between that time, we can still add some adjustments to the plan if we want to. So I know that's a little ways out there, and then we expect to hear final scoring back maybe sometime in December. So hopefully that's in line with what everyone's expectations were as far as the project timeline
that's
goes.
great.
You said adjustments. Can we add letters of support?
Yeah,
Yeah,
So I know
We already got a few in.
1 and 2.
Okay, invasive species website, I think we covered that.
Yep.
Is there,
Yep.
okay. Kalamazoo River Greenway, Kelly.
Yes. Okay. So you guys have heard me talk about the Kalamazoo River Greenway before. That is a plan that was written in 2018. It was under the request of a state representative and then what is now Eagle. And ODC were consultants on that. So they brought 300 plus stakeholders together up and down. They broke the Kalamazoo River and the Rabbit River into like 7 different distinct areas. And there was 300 plus stakeholders that came together to create that plan. And so that has been around and everyone has kind of individually been working on that, whether it's municipalities or nonprofits in the area. So that is something that ODC, there's the Macatawa River Greenway that's had great success and has become Project Clarity. So that's about getting the phosphorus out of the water and creating water clarity. So that's a more usable river and lake area for recreation. So ODC is now interested in doing more with the Kalamazoo River Greenway. And so we're holding a stakeholder meeting this afternoon with nonprofits, the municipalities, getting together to say, okay, you know, what have we done in the last 7-8 years for the Kalamazoo River Greenway plan and what would we like to see happen? And are there ways that we can work together? So we'll be excited to report back on what comes out of that conversation at the next meeting.
Great. Okay, so before we move on to, I think, public comments, I just want to make sure that we review, so everybody knows where their name is tagged on a project and that they'll be the lead. It doesn't mean they can't have other people involved, but that it's good to have a lead. And then I was also hoping we could have a project plan, project charter, and that, you know, that project charter then could be something that so everybody can read it and everybody knows exactly what the approach is for, you know, a particular project. So Mont Baldhead vegetation restoration, invasive species, that I put my name on that one. Wayfinding, signage, we really said we were going to focus on the Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area. And I think Kelly, you
yep.
said you're going to do that one. Streetscaping, Lauren, that's you.
Okay.
Playground spinner, Judy, you said you'd take that one. Property acquisition with the spreadsheet, and who?
That was me.
That's you, okay, okay. And native plantings, pocket prairies, that's me again. And then Cook Park review, we're not gonna actually do anything on that until we get oh, Jamie, do you have that?
So this is like the Butler's green space, and this is like Jones Park and then Cook Park, but we also have part of those lease agreements is that they maintenance that park. We don't do anything with that park.
Cook Park.
Right. That's part of their lease agreement. Even if it's our park, they maintain the park.
Do mow
When you say we don't do anything, we
I'm
are
sorry.
replace, yeah, we,
Maintenance,
routine maintenance, we don't do anything
Yeah,
with that
the
park, like a tree
mowing,
planting, we do.
that stuff. Yeah.
And so if you can see, you know, on that property line right there, even though if you click on the one on the south side of that lot, it says City of Saugatuck in the description.
See that?
You could see how they would have room for that Singapore Yacht Club sign on there,
Here.
that little wedge, yes.
Wait, the wedge is,
This is the Singapore Yacht Club's property.
Okay.
Yeah, and then this is our Cook Park property, Cook Park,
okay,
because we have agreements with them for these boat slips, right? So this is where the agreements come in, because we own this property here. These are our
Oh, I didn't
slips.
realize those
Oh, I
were
didn't
our
know.
slates.
So then, so they have a small amount of greenery around this area, but the majority of theirs, city center. What you see.
It's.
Yeah, I want to take a look at the agreements just to see, like, it looks like, you know, zoning isn't what it used to be, you know, today. Property lines were kind of drawn up, not as pinpoint precise. And so for that, a lot of those types of reasons, you know, to me, it looks like when I click on the Allegan County parcel viewer, like they're leasing out like some of the city property where they already have like asphalt paving. So to me, without looking at those, I wouldn't want to say at a meeting, you know, without reviewing those agreements.
Is all the property to the, like, well, I'll just say to the east of the dotted line that runs parallel. to-
That's road right away. That's ours.
That's road right away.
Yep.
And then it's interesting because when I went on the
city, when I went on the parcel lookup, it says we have 3 parcels, but they're tiny. 1/6, almost 7.7 acres.
Jones,
One's
Jones Park.
Jones Park is 0.008 acres, but here's Cook's Park, 0.7, 0.15, and then 0.3. So like you said,
Okay, well, you know what? It seems like we still need to clarify that.
Yeah.
So we'll just leave that for the next meeting to sort of get that sorted out.
there's
Um,
nice.
Okay, Dark Skies Research is Judy, Kayak Launches is
Yeah.
Keith, right?
And I'm also gonna do the invasive species
Website, right? Okay. So try to get a project charter done and we can review them at the next meeting. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, all right. So we are ready for public comment and I don't see any public to comment.
Adam? No, I'm kidding.
Thanks, Adam.
Okay, and I don't think we had any correspondence.
Nope.
Okay, so we are ready for member closing comments. Judy?
Nothing special today, just good meeting.
Same.
Yep.
Nothing to add. Great meeting.
And I would agree. So thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yes.